not everybody will go through cancer, but almost everybody has at least known someone or had a friend that's gone through cancer.
Everyone's affected by it.
And sometimes and I will say we because I've never gone through cancer, like doesn't know how to react, right? And it's the same like what as a former, like what can people do in that moment? Like what no one knows the right thing. Like are we supposed to ask how you're doing? We're supposed to ask whatever. Do you want food brought to you? Like what is like your advice on that, I guess?
I think the biggest thing that I took out of it was
pause. It's Geena the Latina. Okay, so what you need to do right now, if you're liking the content, is you need to like, subscribe, and comment because we want to keep this show going. We need to like mess with the algorithm a little bit. So if you like the show, help us out a little bit and make sure you follow us at TikTok and Instagram at the Geena the Latina Show. Okay, let's get back to it. So before we start this episode, we're going to take a shot. This is my friend Eileen, and we're going to get to her story in a second. But Eileen, you bring out the fun in me. Eileen, this is pushing her out of her boundary. Out of your comfort zone because you're not usually in front of the camera. Or
no.
you like to dance. You're a dancer.
Yeah.
But she's sharing a story today that is very personal and close to her heart. So we're going to take a shot of tequila.
Because we need it.
Yes,
I need it.
And I already know what we're cheering to. When we first, I put too much in yours.
Let's see.
When we first started this whole podcast, our idea at the beginning, just so you know, was that we were going to have some drinks and casual, just a real conversation. But then as we started inviting guests on, no one wanted to drink. Every time we would offer them a drink, no one wanted to drink. You're literally the first one. You're like, hey, is there tequila? I was like, yes, there is tequila. So we are going to cheers to Eileen. And you're going to hear her story, how she got cancer, has overcome it, and a whole bunch more. But this cheers is to fuck cancer, being beautiful and healthy. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay,
so
and
good.
to this episode. Don't mind my face after this shot. Ooh. Okay, it wasn't that bad.
It wasn't. It was good.
Wait, oh. I'm dramatic when it comes to tequila. Eileen loves tequila, and I love Eileen because you bring out the fun in me. And you're always like, when I first met you, I had no clue the things you had gone through. Because if you see Eileen, if you see her on social media, what's your social media, by the way?
_ Eileen Souk. SOUK.
Yeah. She's obviously beautiful. You have a great life. I don't want to just point out the beautiful, but like you would never know what you have gone through, right? And that's what this episode is about. You never know what someone goes through, and you will never know what someone goes through. And so I think it's our job as people to make sure we're aware of that, because you may never know if someone's depressed, if whatever it is, right? And to further that, and we're going to get to this, the reason why we brought Eileen on is because sometimes when you don't know what people are going through, you ask ridiculous questions, dumb questions. For example, when I was going through my fibroid tumors, they were literally big. I had people all the time ask me if I was pregnant. I was not pregnant. It was already a sensitive subject. If I was pregnant, I would tell you.
Yeah.
Why are you asking me this?
That's just such an uncomfortable thing to ask anyone anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
And in Eileen's case, you always get the question of,
do you want kids? Do you want to get married? Things like that.
That if you like, it's none of your business. Like you shouldn't be asking people, especially in 2023, do you want kids? When are you going to have kids? Like I used to get pressure on that all the time. And I have my own reasons as to why I haven't had kids, but it's not your place. And I felt like if we brought Eileen on and shared your story, it might make you think twice next time you ask someone a question that's really none of your business, right? And I think the problem is that so many people ask questions without thinking, and once if they truly knew the person's story, because this is just Eileen's story, but everyone has a story. Maybe they're an asshole to you because they just lost their dad. You know what I mean? Like if we could really remember that, most times we'll never know their story either, but if you can really remember that, hey, when someone is a certain way, it usually has nothing to do with you or whatever it is. Just let it be. You don't know the full story.
Just
so
have compassion for people. I mean, and that's the number one thing. I reached out to you and I was like having a moment. I just, as a woman, like going through so much in my life. I know we'll probably get to this, but like, I had leukemia 20 years ago. It was like 20 when I found out, 21 going through all of the treatments and things like that. And it's just like my number one thing that I hate is like when people ask you, like, you know,
hold up, pause. We got to take a second to acknowledge our food sponsor, Cravings Fruit Bar. Miguel, Fidel, what's up? They're out in Santee. If you live here in San Diego, they got tons of stuff. They got fruit, chocolate covered strawberries. They got tortas. They got chamoy, everything. Follow them at Cravings Fruit with a K, at Cravings Fruit. All right, let's get back to the show.
Do you want to have kids? And at that point, it's like, you don't know what someone's going through, whether they could have just had a miscarriage or, you know, they are on their 5th round of IVF or, you know, things like that. And then it's a trigger for these people. And as, you know, for myself, you know, going through having like a bone marrow transplant back then, the treatment, you know, completely wipes out, you know, things in my body, stuff that I didn't even know that affected me.
Way later.
Like, for instance, I just had a hip replacement.
Yeah.
like a total hip replacement.
Literally weeks ago.
4 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
And it's, you know, thankfully I've never been the type of person that's like, oh, I dream of just like, you know, being a mother. Although I think that's a special thing because I feel like obviously like women are the only ones that can do that.
Yeah. And
to kind of have that taken away, I mean, it is, you know, it could really get
like she literally can't have kids. And so for someone to ask you constantly when you're having kids, when you're because you have a boyfriend, I bet they're like, when are you guys getting married? When there's like you don't realize the backstory. Most people would not know about it, which we're going to get to your backstory. Like I want to share one of my friends. She's had lupus since we were like 20. And I was just talking to her yesterday. She can't have kids. Her body is not strong enough to carry a baby. So she's going through, you know, like a bunch of things, right? I don't want to put her business out here, but like, it's really hard for her. And people ask them, like her and her husband, like, when are you guys having kids? It's like, bitch, because I like just, it's not your, like, you know?
Just feel like with like women also, when I hear women ask that question, I'm just like, you out of all people should know. We go through so much, you know, with our health. Like we have more health issues than men, and like I just feel like women should have a little bit more like consideration towards that.
Yeah, because it is women asking, and if you're a woman listening to this, and maybe you've never had any reproductive issues. God bless you. Like that, you're great, but you have to realize that other people go through different things.
Like there's so many people that you have no idea.
Yeah,
like
we did an episode on like my heavy periods and fibroids, and we talked about hormones imbalance, and so many women reached out like, thank you for talking about this. We should make this more normal. And that's why we're having this, is that like, I feel like sometimes I don't feel like people are mean. I think they just don't think.
They don't think about it.
They don't think. Yeah. So let's go back to when how old are you? 20, 21?
2021,
And you're just, where are you at in your life when you all of a sudden, like, how did you discover you had cancer? Like, were you sick?
Well, I was doing, you know, what every Asian parent wants you to do, which is like go to school full time, work part time. And I was actually majoring in biology, believe it or not. Like, so different from what I'm doing today. But I really thought that my direction was going towards like being a pharmacist. So when I found out that I was sick, I just, it pretty much, if you guys are, I don't know, familiar with like leukemia, it's not hereditary or anything like that. It's just basically one blood cell that decides to go bananas and produce way more red or white blood cells.
So do you feel like sick, or you just was it an average checkup?
I felt super nauseous. I was so fatigued. And I knew something was wrong with me, but I started feeling better. But with my job, I was actually working like a corporate job, so they needed a doctor's note. So, and I was kind of I still am. I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac, but I made an appointment to go see my primary just because I needed the note. And usually I'm in and out like 20, 30 minutes. And this was different. I went in, you know, he did the normal checking, you know, your lymph nodes, your stomach, or whatever they do, and realized that my spleen was enlarged. And that's when he wanted to take blood samples and get an x-ray done. And then I was there sitting in the waiting room for like an hour, and I'm like, this is something's up. Like, this is different. And he pulls me in, and, you know, after he gets all the results, and he just says, I have to put you into the hospital, like, right away. And I'm like, well,
Like that day,
that moment. And I was with my an ex-boyfriend at the time, and we were just so confused because I was better. I felt better, and I had no idea what was going on. And so, yeah, he admitted me right away, and, like, they ran tests for probably 3 days, and then found out that I had leukemia. And it was CML, which is chronic myelogenous leukemia. And if you were to have it, I guess, like, that's the one that you kind of want because it's, like, slow progressing.
Yeah.
And so
bring us to that moment, because you're 20, 21, right?
Yeah.
Living life. And then they tell you have leukemia. And at that age, you don't really understand you just hear cancer, right?
That's all I knew. So I knew nothing else. So what's
going through your head at this moment?
I was stunned. I couldn't really feel anything because I didn't know about it. You know, I just knew cancer, and I just was like, what does that mean? Like, am I gonna die? Like, you know, I had no clue. So when they admitted me right away, I just was still very shocked until, like, maybe my mom walked in a few hours later, and that's when I just, like, broke down because, like, I have no idea what's happening, you know? But I looked it up a little bit more, and you know, I just try to stay as just, like, calm as possible because I really had no idea. So, like, I didn't want to, like, freak myself out, freak my family out. And it wasn't until like a week or two later that they diagnosed me with what it was. And at the time, like, the known cure was a bone marrow transplant.
Okay. Because remember, this is 20 years ago.
This is,
about 20 years ago. And so,
things
like, things have changed all the time, right? So they tell you what, you need a bone marrow transplant?
They say that it's an option. Like, that's the only known cure. So being so young, and I was, like, still under my dad's health insurance and stuff like that, it kind of just, like, felt like everything was just, like, bam, bam, bam. Yeah. Like, I wasn't really I felt like I wasn't really, like, educated about, like, what exactly CML was, what options I had. I felt like having a bone marrow transplant was my only option.
Yeah.
And at the time, they also came out with a new drug that was, like, puts you in, like, really good remission, and that's what I did. But long term, it's not good for your organs.
Yeah. So I want to pause for a second because we talk about this in a few different episodes. It's just like, and that's the reason why we're doing this podcast, is that there's so many options out there. Even now, like, even though we've progressed, just because we're not bashing doctors, but just because they say they don't know everything, like, do your research, ask other people. You have to advocate for yourself. I think so many times we go to the doctor and we think whatever they say, that's it. And that's what I learned. It's not whatever they say. Yes, they're experienced in their field, but they don't know everything. They're not God. You know what I mean?
It's hard too, because, like, at that age, you don't know better.
You know
what
better.
I mean? And I kind of was like, all I heard was this was the cure.
Yeah.
And so that's all we wanted to get to, you know? But, like, they never told me. I feel maybe I was, like, highly, like, on drugs. I don't know. But, like, I feel like it was never discussed, like, all the effects that a bone marrow transplant will have on me.
And what are the effects of a bone marrow transplant back then? Maybe now it's different. We don't know, but back then.
Today, it just targets the cancer cells, versus back then it targets your whole entire everything. Like, and that's
so even parts that were not,
everything. And had I also known, I didn't know about it affecting your bones later down the line, and that's why I had my hip replacement done
20 years later. She just literally had
20 years later.
You're like walking. I saw a little limp, but you're doing good. You're good.
I'm trying.
So you're 2021. You go through a bone marrow transplant. What is that for people? Like, I don't know. What is that? You just go under and...
Well, it's a series of chemotherapy. It was really weird because I had an insurance where, I mean, being under my dad's, he actually had really good insurance, but it was kind of crazy because the hospital that I had was insured with, if you had CML, they were able to transport you to City of Hope, which is in Duarte, California, which is, like, a known cancer hospital. So when I was in really good remission, they referred me there, and that's when I did my whole bone marrow transplant. So that was like 3 or 4 weeks, I believe, of like chemotherapy going like stronger and stronger and stronger.
Like every day.
Yeah.
And walk us through chemotherapy, because I think people hear it, but if you never like, I've only seen friends go through it.
Yeah.
It is rough.
It's rough.
It's
rough. The first few weeks, I felt like I was fine, but like, I prepared myself.
Yeah.
I knew what I was getting myself into. So I had like long hair. I cut it really short. I didn't want to have to deal with the stress of having my hair fall out. It was really weird because my mom was working for a family friend of ours. Like, she was a physician's assistant. So she was able to take the time off. My dad had just retired. So they were both able to stay with me in Duarte. Like, City of Hope was an amazing hospital, by the way.
Great things about them.
Everyone from all over the world will go to this hospital, and they have they call it, at the time, it was called Hope Village, where they had apartments like for families to stay at. Okay. So it was like at a budget price, which was nice. So my parents stayed up there the whole time with me.
Aww.
It was really sad because like my mom didn't want to leave my side, and like they didn't have like cots like in the room at the time. So she was just like on a recliner chair like every single night, like didn't want to leave me. And I'm like,
even though like the little apartments are like across the street, right? Because they do that for Rady Children's Hospital here in San Diego. They have the McDonald's house where parents can stay because for long-term patients,
awesome.
like they don't want, especially a lot of people are from out of town. So you're going to these treatments. How many hours a day are
I'm there. I'm in the hospital.
Oh, so you don't leave? No, it's inpatient.
Yeah, I'm there I was there for
a
about
month?
4 weeks.
Oh my God. So Libby, I was in the hospital for 10 days straight. And I remember the first time going out to get fresh air was probably like on day 8. And I have never been so grateful for fresh air. Like that is when I felt things. I feel like I was like really big on gratitude until you realize like, oh my God, when I went home and I was able to shower and move my hand up, like, oh my God, I am so grateful that I can shower by myself without having help. I'm so grateful that to like be fresh. You don't realize that until you're in a hospital.
Away from the smallest things in life, and then, when you get it back, your gratitude for those little, like, it changes your life.
Changes your life,
your perspective of everything, and like even right now, I'm like, whoa, I get to like do single-legged exercises now, like since I have my hip replacement, and I'm just like, it's insane, and that's life too. It's like, I feel like when you have these gratitudes for the littlest things, I just feel like you're person.
You'll be happier, right? And a lot of people don't realize that until you go through something extreme. And my question is like, you don't need to go through something extreme to be grateful for the little things in life, like that you can breathe and that you're alive and that
100%.
we're here.
You can move your arms.
You can move this arm. It's crazy because when I was in the hospital, I had IV, and so I couldn't move. I had like an IV for 10 days straight, right? Yeah. The second that thing came out, I'm like, thank God. You know what I mean? So you're in the hospital for 3 to 4 weeks doing chemo. And then what happens after that?
So I think it was like the third. Well, as soon as you go through all of your chemotherapy stuff, and that's when they like, wipe everything out. You pretty much, I don't want to say die. I don't know what the correct like medical term for it is, but like you basically like start a whole new, you wipe everything out. So they're
wiping off of yourself and starting over.
So the first month when they found out that I had leukemia, and knowing that a bone marrow transplant was the cure, they tested my 2 sisters and my brother to make sure that, to see if they were my match. And that's the thing. Like, I would like to also shine light on going out there and volunteering to be, get like a bone marrow.
Yeah, like, it's really hard to find a bone marrow match.
Yeah, it's really hard.
The only reason I know is because we had a little kid we worked with, and I mean, we were looking for a bone marrow match for him for years and years and years, but people are afraid to go do it because
it's not even bad anymore, guys.
It's not. Well, how is it now? So
so 20 years ago, when my sister did it, and it's not painful. You're just basically, it feels like you're giving blood for, I don't know, a long time. That was like 7 hours maybe, but you're watching movies, you're comfortable, you're in a bed, you're warm, you're chilling. So I don't know how it is today. It may even be easier today.
I'm sure it is, because even from like when I had my first fibroid surgery or second, it's like worlds of difference.
Right. But like, it's not hard to go get tests, just get yourself out there to see if you could be a volunteer for a bone marrow,
So where do you know where people go for that? They just go bone marrow donor?
I don't,
I wish I will find it, and I'll do a,
sure.
Instagram video
Yeah.
on it.
But
After
like,
this, yeah.
so with my sister being a perfect match for me, that was like a blessing because like I joined like a bunch of like help groups and stuff like that with people going through what I'm going through. And it was like heartbreaking because there's people with like 7 siblings and not one.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to ask you. Is it normal for a sibling to be a match?
It's the best option because
But it doesn't always happen.
no.
Oh,
No.
wow. So you were lucky.
Yeah, like it's
So your sister was a match. So
Yeah,
what does
she was
that
a
mean
match.
as far as a donor? Like, so you're a match. What does she have to do now?
So she just had to be on like I think a bunch of supplements just to kind of like get her like
All right, hold up. This is like your 20-second Geena the Latina PSA. I need you to like, comment, subscribe below because we want to keep this show going. So if you're liking what you're hearing, please do us a favor and like, comment, subscribe below, or follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the Geena the Latina Show. That's the Geena the Latina Show. I don't know why I can't talk. Back to the show.
just so she could produce more like white and red blood cells or something like that. And then when the time came, like they just kind of like, you know, made sure the timing where I was done with like my chemotherapy and it was like the day of transfer. She was already in, you know, donating. They were getting her bone marrow from her and then they just transfer it over to me, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So you get this bone marrow transplant and does that mean the cancer's gone or like what happens after that?
I mean, it just all depends if it takes or not.
Yeah.
So with her being my sister and a perfect match, it was probably, you know, we had 90% like, okay, we're good. And there's people that have gone through that where it's not a perfect match, but it's close. And it was sad because I was in a unit where it was not just, it was all ages. It was like 1-year-olds to like 70-year-olds, you know, and I saw kids that needed a bone marrow transplant and they couldn't find a perfect match. So they had to get the closest and they were going through so many complications and things like that. So it was heartbreaking to see that. But I am blessed that my sister was my perfect match, you know, and that's why it's like I just try to encourage people, like just try to just go out there.
You don't know, like you can save a life through a simple process. And we're not saying it's overly simple. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's not like anything like to right as your sister would.
It's just like honestly like donating blood, but like literally that was 20 years ago, so it could be way easier today. And
speaking about donating blood, so I'm a recipient. I've had many blood transfusions and I can't donate blood because of my health stuff, but I encourage you to donate blood also because I mean I could go on and on and on, but there's so many people it saves lives
I've
too.
had many blood transfusions,
right? And if people hadn't donated blood, we may not have it. It's not something that blood can be held forever. It's like, you know, we need it, you know, all the time. That's a whole different thing. But I want to talk a little bit. So you're going through this, right? And then your best friend is diagnosed too, or what? Tell me about your best friend.
Yeah, her name is Sandy.
Sandy,
I have to have a drink for this.
Yes, Sandy. Aww.
She.
I'll have a drink with you.
So she actually had cancer like a few years before I even found out, which is so strange because like it's different cancers though. She had a rare cancer called soft part sarcoma.
Okay,
I hope I said that right. And it's a rare cancer. So basically there was no cure for it, and they were just kind of like playing it by ear for years.
And how old was she?
She was the same age as me.
So when she got it, she was like
probably was like 19 or
she was like 19
or 18 when she found out. And so we were like, you know, dealing with that, and then all of a sudden I found out and we kind of both looked at each other like,
so you guys had cancer at the same time?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
was you guys there to support each other?
Yeah.
I would assume.
So it was like different because like I felt bad because, you know, with leukemia there was like a cure. For her it wasn't. And so it was hard because like I hated that. Like
you knew you were gonna live,
and we weren't sure if she was.
Yeah.
So, but let me tell you, like I don't ever wish this upon like a best friend group or anything.
Yeah.
But like if you were to go through something like that, like having your best friend being able to understand like how you're feeling, what medications they're giving you, like she gets it, you know, and like it was a special thing that we shared. Hard for me, sorry. But we were each other's like crutch, you know, like who can say like they went wig shopping with their best friend? You know what I mean? Like we both were like losing our hair, like, you know, had to shave our heads and stuff like that, and like going wig shopping together. When I was in the hospital, like she was at home, but we were always on like back then. Oh my gosh, I'm like aging. I mean, everyone knows how old I am now, but we were like instant message, you know, like on our laptop,
AIM
all day, every day, you know, and it's like no one gets it, but the person that's going through what you're going through.
Yeah.
So it was special, but it was also heartbreaking because like I wish that there was a cure for what she was going through, you know?
Yeah.
So it was, you know, she was probably the strongest person that I ever met because they gave her maybe like a year to live and she outlived it for a few years.
Yeah.
And it just kind of got to a point where there was like nothing left to do because, you know, she had a tumor and it just kept spreading throughout her body. I mean, that girl went through how many brain surgeries and lungs and kidney, like it was just a lot on
all
her.
like in her teens to 20s.
Yeah.
So you're going through leukemia, she's going through her cancer, and then is there a point where like you, I'm not saying get cured or like what, and then what happened, like where, talk about what happened there
With what? With her?
like you lived
And how? Yeah.
she didn't. When was
So-
all this? If you're okay, if not, it's
Yeah,
okay.
I mean,
I just want to know more about
I
Sandy.
might need another
Because,
shot.
look,
I don't know.
But you don't have to. Let's take another shot. You know, Sandy. This is why I talk about, because I feel like Sandy, that's her name, right?
Yeah.
Sandy's here with us, and there's a reason why you're sharing her story,
Yeah.
right? And I always think, like with my brothers when they were murdered, if I don't make something of their story, then it all went for nothing, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you sharing her story
Yeah.
makes her live on and also helps someone who may be going through this, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
But if you need another shot to talk about this, we can. Let's take another shot. Eileen. By the way, if you ever, Eileen's down to party all the time. Are you
tequila. Yeah.
tequila.
Well, you know.
Okay.
But
Whenever
just
you
with
need it, it's there.
I'll take sips for sure.
Okay.
But no, she definitely was. She kind of like made me not made me who I am, but like she made me realize like what a true friend is. You know, like when I was coming out of the hospital, I had the most strict diet ever. It was like canned food, frozen food. Because at the time it was like the most sanitary, you know, I couldn't even have like spices because it could be contaminated.
Yeah.
So my immune system was like wiped out when I came out of the hospital. And with that, I mean, it's depressing. Like who can eat like frozen nuggets all day and like canned soup and like.
And that's so crazy now, knowing that that's what they prescribed you then, because there's so much more healthy food now. But back then, but 20 years ago, that's what they thought was like
it was like the
right?
sanitary way. And so like even if I wanted a fruit, my mom had to like scrub an apple with like bleach water. And like imagine having to eat like a fruit that just smelled like bleach the whole time. So it was,
how is that even healthy? That's crazy
I know,
to me now, right?
I know, but like that's
back
what
then,
that's
what
told
we were told
us to do.
I mean, at one point, this is ancient, but like cigarettes, they put it as like it's such a great thing, whatever. And then now, when you walk into a store, it's like, oh, cigarettes kill. It's just times change.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I do
and
wonder,
you're doing
like what the diet is today. Like I know it's changed so much, like 20 years ago, but you know, after a few weeks and after I felt like my immune system was getting better, Sandy was like, well, my, you know, cousin has this like Thai restaurant and we can go over there and have them cook us something really good. And I'll tell them not to use any pepper and like all this stuff. And so she was like my ride or die. Like she was like, don't worry. Like, we'll like tell them how to cook this. And, you know, so she always like had my back. And, and like, she's the most like family oriented like person. Like she kind of was glued to her family. And was such a true friend. Like if I told her something so stupid, like I need you to come right now. Like my ex-boyfriend's being stupid. Let's go egg his car. Yeah. She'd be like, hold on, let me put my clothes on. Give me like 10 minutes. Yeah. Like she's just like that girl. Aww. And yeah, it's just like every day. I mean, I do feel her around me all the time. I know she is around me, you know, and it was really, really, really hard when she was declining and I was on the up.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. Because like it's like at some point you were up and then she was declining, right?
Like she, not gonna lie, she kind of started to be a little bit closed off,
course,
which
yeah.
was like really hard for me. But I'm very persistent and very stubborn. And I was like, I don't give a shit like what you're going through. Like,
Yeah.
you and I are like this, and I'm going to be there till the end, and I don't care what you say. I'm coming over.
Yeah.
We're going to, get together, and I'm going to be around you, and I don't care. You're not going to be alone. And I even remember I was like, she lived in Arizona at the time, and she was like in a hospice. And I called her, and I found out that she was in there, and I was like, I'm coming. I had just gotten done working at Hard Rock, my dance days. And I'm like, I don't
Seriously,
care.
go dancer? Go dancer. Eileen.
Performer.
The
okay.
best. Sorry. Performer. You might have seen her in San Diego for a lot of years.
So embarrassing.
No, you were like the
that
best.
Was prime time. That
no,
was
you
great.
were the best. Like
thank
in
you.
that day, like they don't make if performers like that anymore. She actually is a dancer that like took it seriously and like the whole outfits and like everything.
It was a good time. And I just remember getting off of work still like oiled up,
Glittered.
whatever I was doing. I was like, I'm coming over. I go straight to Arizona, and she's in the hospice, and I'm like wanting to shower so bad. And so her brother drops me off to go see her, and I'm thinking that he'll come pick me back up, and I'll go home and shower or whatever. And she was like, no, there's a bathroom here. And I'm like, oh, okay. You want me? And this is like a new hospice too. So mind you, there was like nobody there. It was kind of creepy. But I'm like, all right, girl, like, if you don't want me to leave your side, I'm not leaving your side. And so I stayed there, and I just remember going to like this like whole other side of the hospice where nobody was at. I showered in there. And like the light turned off on me, like, out of nowhere. And I'm like, oh my God. But you know what? I was just like, this is not about me. This is, about her. We're going to kind of just like, just keep trucking. And I stayed there overnight with her on a recliner. And, it was like, and I don't care. Like those moments to me were important, I wanted to be there no matter what. And she was being stubborn, but like no matter what, I didn't care.
And so, I'm going to ask this question because I feel like not everybody will go through cancer, but almost everybody has at least known someone or had a friend that's gone through cancer.
Everyone's affected by it.
And sometimes and I will say we because I've never gone through cancer, like doesn't know how to react, right? And it's the same like what as a former, like what can people do in that moment? Like what, no one knows the right thing. Like, are we supposed to ask how you're doing? We're supposed to ask whatever. Do you want food brought to you? Like, what is like your advice on that, I guess?
I think the biggest thing that I took out of it was just that unconditional love and support in a way where like when I was in the hospital, my sisters, they like transformed my room while I was like in the hospital into like the zen, so I had a place to like go to where it was like, nice and calming. They were always just like doing little things, bringing like, fun like books or like something, it's not overpowering. Like what probably bugs somebody that's going through something like that the most is when you're constantly like, oh, how are you doing? Like I get it. Like you want to know. And that's the common question to ask. I think it's just to kind of like, just be present. And keep reminding them that you're there, without being too overbearing.
Like how you doing? I feel like shit. Okay.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like, how about like, we already know that it's a tough time. We don't need to ask how you're doing. Maybe just do things. Yeah. Like,
right? What do you need? Send them a meal.
Yeah.
Like when I had a hip replacement, I had a client that sent me this like this giant spread, and I was like so grateful for that because I don't want to cook. I don't want to like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the little things like that just to make them feel special. Even if it was like a card or writing them like a letter about, but like, I hate, it could be just me and my personality, but I hate people like, like when after like my hip replacement, it was like people, first of all, I hate people telling me what to do, but like when someone's like, oh, are you supposed to be doing that? It's like, first of all, that anyone that knows themselves better is their own selves. Yes. You know what I mean? So if I knew like if my body can handle something, I won't do it.
Yeah.
But it's just
especially someone that like you've gone through all this shit in your life, and now you're judging me on whether or not like, because I know what you're talking about, because you work out, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe on social media it looks like you're doing all these things, but you're probably really just doing your arms or doing something that has nothing to do. Like, again, this brings us back to the point of this episode. You never know what someone's going through. Like, give them a fucking break.
Don't tell them something. Don't tell them what to do when like you don't know what they're going through. You're not in that position, you know, and unless you are in that position, then you could relate, then you could talk about it. But like, don't say, oh, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do it. It's like, first of all, no,
like fuck you.
Just don't tell me. First of all, don't tell me what to do. But other than that, like, you know, I don't know, it was just like a weird thing. Like, I did have friends that were like that. And it was just like, girl, like, first of all, I've been, you know, I know my body. Yeah. You know, I've been active. I have to work out 5 days a week. And it's not even for physical. It's for mental.
Mental, yeah.
Like, honestly, I have to start my day that way. Yeah. And I'm not stupid. Like, I know when to take it back. Yeah. I know when it's not, you know what I mean? Like, if it's going to hurt my hip even more, or it's going to like jeopardize the surgery, of course I'm not going to do that. So
let's get to the hip replacement, because I think that's possibly one of the effects of the bone marrow transplant. And that was one of the things you wanted to talk about, is that, you know, no one told you about the effects, right? And let's get to that a little bit.
Let's also go back to like when I was in the hospital with my bone marrow transplant, and I just remember I was so out. It was probably my second or my third week of chemotherapy, so it gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and I'm just like out of it at this point.
And your hair, but you already shaved your head, so you didn't have to go through your
hair. Okay. But like I just remember like a nurse. I don't know if I asked or like she brought it up, but you know, she was just like, oh, like kind of like felt bad for me, and I was like, what is this lady talking about? And she just mentioned about like, oh, I don't know if you're gonna be able to have your kids or something like that. And I was like, wow, like this is like a random, I'm like fucked up on like
she
chemotherapy.
Casually just brought it up.
Yeah, I can't even remember if I even asked her or like she did, but like I just remember her telling me this, which that was something
you weren't told before.
No, which I feel like my oncologist should have ran through all the things that,
like, hey, if you do this, there is a possibility you can't have kids or whatever it is.
Yeah. And that wasn't a choice that was given to me. That's what I'm saying. It's like with that, because like all we were focused on was saving my life by like, if this was a cure, we have to do it. And so it was never like an option, although I probably wouldn't have chose the latter, because like, you know, I want to live, you know, but
you would like to know all your options, which is why, again, advocate for yourself. If you're going through any health stuff, don't just go based on what the doctor tells you. I'm not saying what they're wrong. I'm just saying, do your research, ask people who've gone through this. Like, you don't like, don't feel pressured to do something. You have time. Like, just go,
like,
you know?
With like the younger people today, like if they're going through something like that, like, and you guys have questions, like please DM me, like, because these are things that I wish I would have voiced and talked about and like knew, you know? So
she casually mentions that you're not gonna have kids, and that's the first time you ever thought about it.
And like that was like a weird, like that really put me in such a dark, you know, like place. But you know, 20 years later, it's just something that I just like had to come to terms with, and like I found like an outlet to fill in that void, and that's why I love traveling so much. You know, like I'm not gonna have children. Like this is gonna be what I want to put.
So you can't have children because of the bone marrow transplant.
Yeah.
So anyone that gets a bone marrow transplant can have
kids?
No,
but it's different today.
Different today. Okay.
Yeah, because nowadays I heard that it just attacks just the cancer cells and not your whole entire like everything in your body.
Yeah. So that's one of the long term that you didn't know. Another one was the hip. Let's talk about the hip replacement, because you just had it a few weeks ago.
4 weeks ago.
4 weeks ago, and she's here, by the way.
Walking.
Eileen is one of the toughest women and people I know. You really are, because you really put on a strong face. You don't know like what's going on. No. Like she's a bad bitch. Like if you need like she'll put her hair back and like let's go. I think that's why me and you got along for the second, because if everyone doesn't know where it comes from, like that's how I am too. I've had to mature. We both had to mature a little bit because of our career. But you know, we will.
But like again, like this is another thing. Like I wasn't told that it was gonna deteriorate my bones or like whatever, and so like I've been dealing with this hip thing, which you know, and it's another to kind of piggyback on like the strong thing. It's like I've always been active. I danced in heels in like a club, like, and I had this like weird pain, but it would go away. So I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just because I was like active.
Yeah.
But in actuality, my femoral head was like deteriorating and I had no idea. And so,
because no one told you that was one of the repercussions
I had
of the
no
bone marrow transplant.
No, and then the fact that it was like better after like I gave it like a 2-day rest or something.
Yeah.
But
I think I remember when you would like have some pain.
yeah, I would like limp. It's not a big deal because I was lifting heavy. I was pushing myself, and so I was like, oh, it's just because of that. But it was because I switched over to like a new primary doctor. And so when I, basically you go and you tell them all the things, and I made a whole list of like all the stuff that bothered me. I told her about my hip. And so I said that I want to also meet up with an oncologist because I want to establish a relationship with an oncologist because I haven't seen one in like 10 years. She's like, okay, that's a good idea. Let's do that. I went and saw my new oncologist, and he's like, okay, well, the note says you have some like hip issues. Like, tell me about that. And so I kind of briefly told him, and he's like, okay, because with the bone marrow transplant that you had, it affects your bones. And I was like, oh, that's cute.
That's cute. No one told me that. All right.
I was like, tell me more. And he was like, well, let's get like x-rays done. And I'm like, all right, cool. So we go get x-rays done. And then he calls me that night. I was actually in the gym at the moment, which is kind of ironic.
Eileen's always at the gym.
Yeah. He like calls me at like 8 p.m. And he's like, yeah. And like, I will always remember the tone of his voice. And he was just like,
hold up real quick. Like, subscribe, comment below, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the Geena the Latina Show. Okay, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, you need a hip replacement. And I'm like, a what? Like,
yeah.
Isn't this for like 70-year-olds?
Yeah, like my dad had a hip replacement when he was in his 70s. So it's not something that young people technically
and that's
usually
another
get.
thing. And it's not, and I get that all the time when I tell people like, oh, I need a hip replacement surgery. They're like, oh, you're so young. Guess what? You can have a hip replacement for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
And it's not just because you're older. It's because you're an athlete. You wore out your bones. You had cancer.
And by saying you're so young, it makes them, they already feel like shit. Like, just stop. Like,
exactly.
Just, and I think half of this, I think we do have to have grace, is that people don't realize what they're saying. And that's the point of this episode, is like, you never know what someone's going through, and you're never going to be perfect, but be mindful, because and most times you won't know their full story. Like, we're going in depth in Eileen, but like, you won't know what that rude cashier is going through. Maybe they just lost someone, you know what I mean? And so it's just kind of like, let it be, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it was really frustrating having to be like, no, it's not because I'm, young, I get it. It's not just old people, but it was frustrating, because I have to go into the, well, I had cancer, I don't know, and it was just like annoying. It's like, I don't want to.
Well, now you could just send them the link to this. So, here you go. I'm not going to explain it, but here you go. Just watch it.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. It's like, it's people are not aware or like educated about things like that too. Yeah. And it's like, there's so many other reasons why you need a hip replacement, know? But again, back to the whole asking stupid questions. Like,
so where are you, before we get back to that, we're going to end on that. Where are you at right now? Like, someone who may be naive and not like, can your cancer come back? Are you cured? Like, has it, like, what is like, just,
luckily I just had like blood work and stuff done, so I'm in the clear.
So is this something you have to do like every few years for the rest of your life?
For my peace of mind, yes. Like, you should. Yeah. But I do it because I am a little bit hypochondriac, so I do want to know, like, if there's anything like weird, I'm like, oh, I have to go like get it checked,
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's just being a woman, there's just so much we have to deal with.
Yeah.
And this is another reason why we're here today, because we want everyone to just have like some compassion towards that, because like a lot of men don't realize what we go through as women, know, and it could be, like we have more health issues than they do. And I just feel bad for like some women that are having a hard time with like fertility and things like that. And like men are always, it's always a woman's fault, or they frown upon you because you can't. And like, that's not fair.
Yeah.
And
we talked about this in a different episode. And a lot of what we're finding out now in recent years is that it actually, because of the toxin and everything, it actually is not always the woman's fault. A lot of the guys' sperm count is way low, and the doctors never think to test them. And I had a friend who like kept trying to do the egg, like she was going through IVF and had the eggs, and it kept like not making it past, I think, like the third day. And come to find out, after 10 of her eggs were gone, it was the sperm that was the problem, right?
Exactly.
So it's not just
but
women
it's always
anymore.
Focused on the woman.
Yes.
And that's just not fair.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, even if it's a man's fault, like men don't get that shame as much as women do.
Yes.
And
they don't at all. At all.
Really. It's like, because you know for a fact women will stay by that man's side no matter what.
Yes,
you know, but like it's questionable if it was reversed.
Yeah.
And that fucking sucks.
How has your experience been like with that? Because I think that's important to talk about as a woman who can't have kids and dating. Like, is that something you say right away? Is that whatever? Has that been?
Yeah. No.
How has the response been? Like, just even if it's
depends.
horrible, it's
like that's probably why a lot of the time, like I've held back from like dating seriously. But like even if I was to, you know, with my current boyfriend now, like it was never anything that I held back. Like it was always like in the beginning, like I had to like share like what I went through and my position, because it's not fair to create this bond with somebody and then down the line it's like, oh, let's drop this bomb on this person, you know. And like I feel like if that was their goal in life, was to have a family, to be a parent, like I want that for them. I want them to have that experience and not like at all hold them back from that. And I want to, you know, give that to them. And I would even, you know, choose to walk away so they can have that, because I get it. And I don't know if that's like, you know, weird for me to do, but like I get it, you know, like if that's something that I can't give a person, like and that's what they want, I feel like they should have that.
Yeah.
And then it's their decision and whether or not, you know, what they want.
A healer once told me, and I think I wanted to share this with you and everyone else. So I don't know if I can have kids. I've never really wanted them, so I never checked, but with all the health issues, I would assume probably not, right? But I grew up around a big Mexican family, and I took care of my family, and so I didn't want to take care of anybody anymore. And it's funny because that bag says Matthew, and that's my brother's name. I barely noticed that today, right? Anyways, and so but I always wanted a family, so I was like, well, there's this weird juxtapose, like I definitely don't want to birth someone or whatever. But so she told me, she said, family can look different than what you expect. And this was before I met my current boyfriend. She said, maybe you'll meet a guy who already has kids and who you can step into that role as. Or maybe your family just looks like a guy who doesn't want kids either, and it's you and the dogs. You know what I mean? And
lots of dogs.
In my mind, it was just you have to have like get married, like very traditional, right?
Yeah.
But then when she pointed that out, I was like, you're right. Family doesn't have to look how we were taught that family needs to look. Family could be you and yourself, and that's it. You know what I mean? It really like changed your focus on what family looks like. And when I did that, I met my boyfriend who has 2 sons and a 10-year-old who lives with us half time, and it's perfect, you know. And my nephew lives with us. He's 20. And so, you know, and I have a shitload of people around me that I feel like I have to take care of. So it's like, we have family, you know, but once I was able to, then it was easier for me to be like, you know what, I don't feel like I'm letting someone down. Like, cause my parents were on me about having kids, and like, you know, I've had these conversations with them, you know, like when like I thought I was like ruining my mom's dream. I probably still ruined her dream, but you know, it is what it is. Right.
Yeah. But I have like 3 nieces and like 7 godchildren. So like I'm
You're
good. Like I'm busy. I'm getting like stretched.
But once you realize that like family doesn't have to look in the traditional sense
but that's like what society wants us to think, right? And that's like what I'm just trying to say. It's like, you know, like I feel like women nowadays too are like they're in like their masculine like era where they can take care of themselves, and I feel like a lot of women today are like they're not so focused on that. Like they're okay with like having a family by themselves, getting married, you know, like not having to get married and stuff like that. So the guy it's not like a necessary thing, I feel like, to like be married. It's like a guy has to enhance, you know, their life. They're not dependent on like a man, like how it used to be, I guess, you know?
And it's finding the right fit for you. Like maybe some people, their dream is always to get married and have kids, and you find that person. And maybe other people that, I guess my point is that like once we change the idea of what family looks like or what we're supposed to do, like that all changes. So before we go, I'd like to give us one last rant because it was funny that when Eileen, because I was just randomly booking the guests on the show because I book it like a month before we film, right? And I was literally booking them in the moment, and you DM'd me, and I don't even check all my DMs, and you're like, "Girl, can I come on your podcast to talk about this?" Because something had happened.
So emotional.
I was like, "Yeah, girl, we're shooting on this day. What time?" So we're gonna give one last rant or whatever, a reminder that you never know what people's backstory is, and specifically what is a question that
asking women, do you want kids? Do you see yourself with a family? Do you want to be married? Like, who is no one's business but yours and the person that you're in that relationship with.
Yes,
that's the only person that you should be talking about. You know, if you guys want to have children or you want to get married.
Unless you choose to bring it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But, like, it should never be, it's not an icebreaker. It's not a great question to ask somebody. Like, you don't need to get to know somebody. Because, like, if you asked me that and I didn't know you and I just had a miscarriage, I don't want to talk about my miscarriage with a random person.
And people use it as a crutch, like when they don't really know. Like, I think we can come up with different conversations, like, "How are you? Yeah. How are you feeling today?" Like,
how you see yourself in 5 years? That's better than
like ask me about my
like,
career all day long or whatever. Sometimes I'll be like, "I don't want to talk about it."
Who's
whatever.
your hairstylist?
Who's your hairstylist? And that brings me to Eileen. Eileen is a hairstylist here in San Diego. A beautiful plug your hair. How can they find you?
Flirt Salon. We are on Instagram as well. Flirt Salon SD.
And your Instagram again?
It's _ Eileen, EILEENSOUK.
Okay, and so if they want to book a hairstylist appointment with you,
they can leave a message and I'll text them back.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Eileen. Wait, should we take one more shot to go or no?
Why not?
Sure. What you do this one? What should we do it to?
To life. And not taking the small things for granted and having so much gratitude like every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.